So today I'll be presenting about some of the research that I've been doing under Dr. Samiksha Raut. So at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, we offer a course called Contemporary Topics of Biology, or also known as BY 101. This course is typically geared towards non-STEM major students. It also has a service learning focus. If you are not familiar with service learning, it is the application of acquired knowledge towards a community through some act of service. In this case, UAB students were able to create a relevant community project that could boost their understanding of the biology topic and revolutionize scientific content. For instance, for the first half of the semester, students covered the opioid epidemic, and they learned about the opioid epidemic and then tried to make projects that would help better their local community. However, as of March 2020, all of you must know, during that spring semester, the COVID-19 pandemic caused many school systems, including higher education, to shut down across the nation due to the rising number of COVID-19 cases. Therefore, many school systems had to shift from in-person classes to online classes. Therefore, Dr. Raut was able to adapt the course from an online to an online transition. And so she pivoted from making use of traditional in-person service learning to making use of e-service learning. And this is very novel considering the fact that it would give students a chance to retain some type of normalcy in the midst of a pandemic, but also make sure that they're still learning and they're learning in groups to retain that sense of cohesion. Therefore, Dr. Raut created a 4-week module called Raising Awareness about COVID-19. This module required students to watch lectures on the science related to COVID-19, attend Q&A guest lectures with physicians and public health experts. They also got the chance to talk to a COVID-19 survivor. And they also had, at the very end, had to create an infographic that could be shared via social media, so Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. And the final component would include also writing a post-reflection. And so just the post-reflection would then include what they learned throughout the module and the experience. And so basically it would give students a chance to self-reflect on what they learned, how they kind of grew as a person, and their experience working on the project. Therefore, the module that was created, it was to help just inform students about COVID-19 and the associated risk. Because show that when you inform people about the risk of COVID-19, it actually makes them have a more positive attitude when they go to adapt safe behaviors. Okay, and so this course was very important to non-major biology students because it would give them a chance to better understand what it means to look like with credible information. And this is therefore the entire module was about countering the misinformation that was being spread through social media at the time, because there was an infodemic going on. So here are a few examples of the infographics that students created. They are very well put together. So in order to create these infographics, students were put into groups and tasked with basically just creating an infographic poster that would not only help educate, but spread awareness about COVID-19. As you can see, the infographics included how COVID-19 has spread, those that are most at risk, the effects, and much more. So I know probably many of you are asking, well, why study non-STEM major biology students? The reason why we chose to study non-STEM majors is because they typically only have to take 1 to 2 science classes in order to fulfill their science core. And then they will go on to work in public policy, law, and business, in addition to other professions. So it is very important that they make sure that when they leave our class, that they have a much deeper foundation of interpreting and understanding science in the most digestible way possible. We also wanted to make sure that they were understanding that we were teaching them this because non-STEM majors are are a very important population, but they are very understudied in STEM education. That being said, we hypothesized that this module would result in a greater learning gain related to the understanding of the pandemic and relative safety measures. As a result, our research question was which aspects of our module were associated with what learning gains. As for how we carried out this experiment, so each student in the class was required to write a post-reflection based on the prompt that I have provided on the screen. And so, as you can tell, it generally allowed students to freely speak about what they were not only able to learn, but their experience on the module as a whole, whether it be working in groups, to getting to talk to family members or friends, to anything really. It was just a free write, as long as they were staying on topic with the prompt. So we had 112 students enrolled in the course, and this is typically a high enrolling course. So on average, we have about 120 students in the course, but in this semester was 112. That being said, 87 of those students consented to having their post-reflection used in our study. Then 8 of those students further consented to taking part in our semi-structured interviews that were conducted over Zoom. And I know many of you probably may be thinking, well, 8 is probably a very small number. Well, actually, usually in education research, usually 8 to 15 students are used. And it's normal because when you start going above 15, you start hearing the same things again, and it is no longer really adding to the qualitative data that you are trying to analyze. So in order to analyze the 87 post-reflections, we had 2 coders examine the reflections using 4 predetermined categories, which allowed them to create their own individual codes. And their individual codes consisted of the sub-themes that fit into the 4 predetermined categories. And as you can see on the left, the 4 predetermined categories are service learning, guest lectures, COVID-19 information, and COVID-19 other. These four categories had been selected by both the coders and Dr. Raut. So once the coders finished creating their own individual codes that consisted of the sub-themes, they compared codes and created a mutually agreed upon code. Nonetheless, the 8 interviews were also coded the same way, but we used 2 different coders to make sure that when they were coding, there was no influence from the last set. So here in figure 1, it showcases the number of times that students brought up themes that fell under one of the 4 major categories when they were writing in their post-reflection. To begin with, the category that had the most themes was the 3rd category, COVID-19 information, which had a total of 36 themes. And this themes focused on how students cited in their post-reflection that they understood the big take-home points of the module. And so this included why we should follow social distancing, the importance of staying home and trying to do your part, and modes of transmission. The 2nd category that had the most themes was COVID-19 other with 33. These themes looked at how students mentioned the effects of COVID-19 on life and the world in their post-reflection. For instance, many of the students cited that COVID-19 had caused many people to lose their jobs, had shut down school systems, and it overwhelmed hospitals due to the large influx in their patient volume. So, and then students also went on to cite that COVID-19 was actually causing a lack of supplies in terms of testing and PPE and ventilators. Finally, both service learning and lectures had 7 themes in each category. The themes that fall under service learning highlighted how many of the students that wrote about being grateful for taking part in this project. Students also talked about how the module was very eye-opening and enabled them to determine what was a credible source from what was not, when they were working on developing their own infographics and having to research sources in order to correctly and accurately describe science. And so this, again, was very important considering there was an infodemic going on. As for lectures, those themes emerged from students citing that they were better able to understand the facts of COVID-19. the severity of the virus and why public health guidelines need to be followed. It also included that students felt that they were very well informed because of the lecture. Moving on to figure 2. Figure 2 shows how many times a popular subtheme was brought up during a student interview that fell under one of the 4 major categories. In the case of student interviews, this was the service learning category that had the most. The popular subtheme that students brought up during their interviews that they liked the service learning component of the module because it gave them a chance to speak to their family and friends. It also allowed them the chance to be creative and create an infographic that would not only help educate, but spread awareness about COVID-19. Then both guest lectures and COVID-19 information had 4 students bring up a popular subtheme that fell under them. The popular subtheme that fell under guest lectures was that they liked the course and appreciated having guest lectures teach online to them about what they were a professional in and explain their point of view on COVID-19. As for a popular subtheme that fell under COVID-19 information, it was how 4 students were able to demonstrate knowledge that they had regarding COVID-19 in terms of testing centers and relative safety measures. However, the least cited category was other. And this was because 2 students, when they were being interviewed, discussed that they noticed inequalities in healthcare that had been exacerbated by COVID-19. So this 4-week module gave students not only a chance to learn about COVID-19 through guest lectures and pre-recorded lectures, but it gave students a chance to impact their local community by educating others, by creating a great infographic that could, again, be distributed via social media. And so when we encourage students to share their infographics with their peers, their family, and their friends through social media to start those important conversations about COVID-19 and why it should be taken seriously, and why we should subsequently follow those public health guidelines that have been put in place. So at the end of our analysis of the post reflections, we understood that students were actually able to accurately demonstrate that they understood the science behind COVID-19 transmission and relative safety measures as a result of the module. And when we tried to understand what caused such a great learning gain in many of the students, we actually found that the expert Q&A sessions and lectures were the most impactful on students and their learning gains in COVID-19. Overall, we think that these results demonstrate that e-service learning can create an inclusive classroom in higher education because it helped remove the barriers that would have stood in the way of many students because of disability if we had to make use of traditional in-person service learning. We hope that our research will allow for e-service learning, a promising pedagogical tool, and guest lectures to be further integrated into school curriculum for remote online science classes. And the reason why we hope this is because it fosters an environment of inclusivity and is able to reach a more diverse group of students that would otherwise be put at a disadvantage. Additionally, we hope to include in these online service learning projects much more than just infographics. We hope to find more dynamic ways of sharing information, such as incorporating podcasts. So our work actually has been published and is in press through the Journal of Microbiology and Biology Education, which I am a co-author on. And so I would like to acknowledge that this work was supported by NSF, and we would like to thank our guest speakers that came and were able to do online lectures for our students. Amy Chatham, the director of the Office of Service Learning and Undergraduate Research, our team of both undergraduate and graduate researchers that helped us do the study, and the UAB media for helping cover the course. And thank you so much for letting me present today.
All right, presentation, Ryleigh. Thank you so much. It's great to see that work that we've been talking about, see it and come to fruition. So yeah, I'd like to open up the floor for a couple minutes to any comments or questions from our audience.
You.
And yeah, I second the compliment of to get an authorship is fantastic. Well done. Well, maybe while we're waiting for someone to type something in or to ask a question, I just want to ask you to maybe reflect on the experience from your perspective. Kind of apply that service learning approach to, what was it like conducting this and doing this research during COVID for you?
I know for me, my role in research was to actually, I was the one who was actually coding a lot of the responses. And so I know for me, it was very eye-opening to see just how, because I obviously knew about service learning before, but I didn't realize how impactful it could be. Like the growth that you saw in students when they said like, oh, well, coming in, I did not know anything about COVID-19. But by the end, I was able to talk to my family members and friends about this, and seeing that large growth in students was absolutely amazing. And so I think Dr. Raut and her teaching, and anybody who was helping out with her teaching team back then, did an excellent job of just pivoting in order to teach students something that was both relevant and meaningful, and give them the tools to make an impact in their community. And so they just did a wonderful job back then. And conducting research during the pandemic has been, it's been very a seamless transition for me, because with education we can still do it over the computer, and we just kind of got together as coders and just kind of did over the computer over Zoom, so there wasn't much that hard of a transition for us.
Learning coding, that's good. Absolutely. No, and that's something I've talked to a lot of students about. It's been a challenging year in many ways, but you can learn new skill sets and new approaches. Research there's so much you can do with it. So that's great. There's some nice compliments in the chat.
Thank you, everybody.
Any other questions or
Any questions?
comments? I know that you are going to be presenting at Posters on the Hill. Again, congratulations for that, where you'll get to talk to some of our representatives. And we're going to chat about that here offline.
Yes.
And I have to respond to your email. Sorry about that. But yeah, it's very exciting. Compliments to you again, and all of your mentors for supporting you through this process. So